I'm Philippa Fabbri. Welcome to the Show Your Superpower series. Conversations with engineers, entrepreneurs, creatives, founders, scientists, thought leaders, disruptors, and warriors. Here to provide insight into what differently able children can become, given the right environment, teachers, and parenting. Because just asking the right questions and listening to what our children need can turn real challenges into superpowers that can change their world. Here we go.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday night. My name is Philippa Fabbri. I'm a qualified teacher with a doctorate in special needs education and a special interest in understanding children and how they learn, because no child should ever be excluded from the learning environment. Today, I am launching a new series called Show Your Superpower. And I'm so excited to be discussing learning disabilities, learning barriers, and superpowers with you this evening. 16 years ago, I co-founded a school in 2005 called Elson Academy. And for the past 16 years, we've created an environment where children can be seen and heard, that no child should ever have to feel excluded. As an education consultant with over 25 years experience in the education space, I provide child-centered solutions to school-related challenges. My name is Philippa Fabbri. Let's demystify the diagnosis to discover hidden potential. So welcome to the first episode of Show Your Superpower. And I'm excited to be able to bring you guests from all over the world. And these conversations, I'm hoping, will inspire you and your children to look way beyond a diagnosis or a label or a medication script. When I looked up the word superpower in the dictionary, it refers to a person's particular genius. It's the specific, unique, and specialized skill that they possess. So if I had to ask you, what is your superpower? What would you say? Can you immediately tell me? Have you discovered it yet? So let me introduce my first guest. And while I'm introducing him, show me or tell me where you are and where you are watching us from. Please let me know who is watching so that we can really have an amazing interactive conversation this evening. So it gives me great pleasure. He's waiting backstage. We've chatted before, and I would love to welcome him onto the stage with me. Preeyus, welcome all the way from London.
Hi, Philippa. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk this evening. And hello to everyone in the audience.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And we spoke earlier today about the weather, that you're having this heat wave at the moment.
We're having wonderful weather here in the UK, clear skies and 28 degrees Celsius for those of you who work in Celsius. And I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but very, very warm.
Yeah, and we are having a cold spell. but it's warm in the studio. Let me tell you. So tell me about you. What do you do?
So I work as a principal environmental consultant. If I rewind slightly to where I was kind of at university, I studied environmental science as an undergraduate, and then I studied ecology and biodiversity as a master's. And soon after, worked in law and policy and made a transition from law and policy into consulting. And in consulting, I started as a ecological consultant and have worked my way up to be a project manager. So what that entails is me managing large groups of people, all different specialists from different technical disciplines, and we issue reports on behalf of governments. So when I worked in law and policy, I wrote different law and policy pieces for the European Commission and the UK government. And throughout my consulting career, I've been afforded some very, very interesting opportunities to work with some major transport schemes in the UK and Europe. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. So, as I was chatting to you, I was having a quick look through the comments. So, we've got a teacher watching from Port Elizabeth. We've got Marjorie watching from Lake Farm Centre, PE. And we've got Mimi who's asking if we are recording the interview. Yes, we are, Mimi, we certainly are, but it's also going to be on Facebook and on YouTube for a while longer. So that is, there are a few the questions that I wanted to ask you, because I was thinking when I was planning this interview, what would parents of children with different needs be wanting to know? And I think the whole point of this series is to almost demystify things like dyslexia, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, and all those words that get flung around IEP meetings and school reports. And I think as parents, you hear a label and you immediately think, oh dear, this is terrible, things are bad, school is hard for my child, how will we ever get through it? And you kind of tend to become a little bit overwhelmed and have this feeling of despair. So take us back, Preeyus, to when you were 10 years old. Who were you then?
I was in some ways exactly the person I am today. And in other ways, I was a completely different young man. So at first, I would say I was a young boy who enjoyed nature, who enjoyed interactions with nature, and was very, very close with my family. The things that I struggled with as a 10-year-old child were things that maybe came very easily to other children. So reading, comprehension, and all the kind of English exams that were put in front of us, as well as verbal reasoning at school. But at the same time, the things that came to me very easily were things like maths and things like nonverbal reasoning and Mensa puzzles and solving complex kind of patterns. So I was very different. Things were much harder and I felt much more frustrated with the position I was in because I didn't understand what was happening to myself or why I was different to other children. And I was unfortunate to be in a school where they weren't very receptive or understanding to the fact that I had dyslexia. However, I've always had and been very lucky and fortunate to have a wonderful family full of intelligent and diverse people who were always there to support me and carry me through harder times. But yes, in some ways, I was still the nature-loving person I am today, but in other ways, things were harder. Philippa, I can't hear you.
I'm muted, that's why. Can you unmute me? There we go. Is that better?
Yep, that's better. Got you back.
Okay, so we're talking about superpowers this evening. So, Preeyus, when would you say you discovered your superpower?
I would say it almost took me until I So I went through an interesting journey. So I went to a secondary school where they were very, very receptive and understood what learning disabilities were, and helped me have a diagnosis for dyslexia, and then put a few systems in places and get some support teachers to come in and help me. I must say that as much as that was helpful, it really took my internal maturity and me to get to a stage where I understood what was happening to me. And I would say I always use a few key words. One is patience, two is self-confidence, and those two things tied in for me probably around 18 or 19. And I'd not done so well in my first round of A levels, so I had to redo them and continue. But when I got to university, that's when I would say my real kind of superpowers kicked in. And that's when I would say I was probably reading more than my peers, coming up with better solutions to problems than my peers were, and rethinking in a way which afforded me the opportunity at a Russell Group university in the UK to achieve kind of the highest grades in my class.
So when did you know what you wanted to do when you left school? When did you know that you wanted to go into this particular field?
So I would say it's something that's been there for my whole childhood. It's something that's been there for me my whole life. In terms of specifically what I wanted to do, I would say I probably didn't have too much of an idea until I actually got to university. And I thought, here I am at a great university in the UK, studying a fantastic degree, and now I can see where my path is. And working out that environmental science was what I loved and what I was passionate about and drove me to take my next steps. I think that's the point where I started exploring what the options were and how the environment sector worked as a sector in itself.
So you must have been, what subjects did you take at school then? When
So
you
at
were
school, I took
high school?
biology, chemistry, and maths. So at GCSE level, I took maths, chemistry, biology, physics, kind of all the full host of rounded subjects that you need to take when you're kind of 16, and achieved fairly good grades for someone who had dyslexia, but I've always overcompensated by using my memory. So I've always had almost a photographic memory, but it works in many, many different ways. So that's what really took me through my GCSEs, and unfortunately that format didn't work so well when I got to my A levels.
Okay, so explain for us A levels and O levels or GCSE.
Yeah, so GCSE are your first set of exams. They're our first kind of public exams that we do in the UK. They are kind of, we call it year 10 and 11, and then you go to 11 and 12 and 13, but 11 and 12 means you're probably aged between 15 and 16, most people are, and then 17 and 18 are the final 2 years before you go to university, and you'd go to university around age 19.
Yeah, okay. So in other words, at the end in South Africa, at the end of grade 9, we have 9 subjects. At the end of grade 9, you then choose your 7 that you're going to focus on for 10, 11, and 12. And then the grade 12 exams are your last exams before you leave school. And those exams are set by the external, either the IAB or our government exams, or our school, we write Sakai exams. So our kids get to choose 7 subjects that they're going to focus on. And then in terms of accommodation, so, again, at Elson Academy, children who are, or I suppose I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when you are diagnosed with something like dyslexia, you then apply to have accommodations or exam concessions. So we call them concessions, where you can either get a scribe or a reader scribe or just a reader, and then automatically you go into a separate venue and you get extra time. I think it's 15 minutes per hour of the exam. So is that the same as
that's similar were? So what I had in my secondary school was similar. I got 25% extra in external exams and internal assessments as well, in order to accommodate for my dyslexia. I unfortunately didn't have someone who was a scribe or someone who read to me. That was something which I had to figure out myself.
Well, it's interesting you say you have an incredible memory, because I think a lot of people with dyslexia either are very visually strong, so they'll remember pictures and diagrams and maps and drawings, and they often learn using drawings and tables and things like that. Or on the other side, you're very good auditorily, so you remember the lessons really, really well. Tejas, who's that? Hello from Connecticut. Who's that? Is that a friend of yours?
Yes, that's my friend from the US. He's a young gentleman who's navigating school at the moment.
Excellent. Okay, so let's go back to we said, what problem did you want to solve after school?
So my real passion after I left school was to have a positive impact on the environment. And it was that broad. I wanted to stop things like climate change, which I still do to this day. I wanted to stop deforestation. I wanted to have a positive impact on biodiversity and have a net positive biodiversity. And so I was in a forum where I knew where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. I didn't quite know how I could do it, but I knew that was what my path was.
Were you on it? I'm just trying to think now. Would you have been on some kind of at school, did you have committees like we have the science club and the environmental club and things like that where kids can get involved in outside of the classroom? Did you have that as well?
We did have some, but ours were predominantly centered around kind of the things that you would see in a typical school. So they were debating society, sports clubs,
Yes.
so football and basketball. I'm a avid football player and supporter
Okay.
of football teams, so my passion went down that route. But yeah, we didn't have too many environmental societies. We did have kind of litter collecting and things of that sort. However, nothing specific in terms of kind
Okay.
of environment.
So that didn't help you steer in that path. You really had made up your mind prior to, or even that didn't really necessitate you going in that direction. You were going to go
No.
anyway.
No, there was a good support network within my school in terms of helping people develop their interests and explore what was there, which was fantastic. But one thing for me was my parents had always given my sister and I the freedom to explore our garden, to pick up anything we wanted, and there were no limits, any insects. And I was a very brave young child who enjoyed making worm hospitals and ant hospitals and picking up woodlice and seeing their behavior. When you prod a woodlouse, they turn into a ball. And, all these types of very specific things. And my sister and I used to spend all our time digging holes and making ponds. And I used to breed fish when I was younger. And it really stemmed me at that point when I was thinking about what I wanted my career to be. I always thought to myself, I don't want to be a person who just sits in an office. I don't want to be a person who just has to write reports. Admittedly, that is what I do now. I write a lot of reports, but influential reports that affect government decisions and how projects are done. But it framed what I wanted to do.
And when would you say you were officially you knew or said, I have dyslexia, this is what it is, and this is why I struggle to spell or read? When did that happen?
That's interesting. That's something which probably took me a lot longer. So at first, of course, I was around 11 to 12 when I was told that I have dyslexia, and that's what it was called. Never heard the word dyslexia prior to the diagnosis of being dyslexic. Once it was explained to me, I understood it contextually and more conceptually than something that affected me.
Well, what was happening up to that point?
Up to that point, so pretty much in primary school, we had a system where a teacher would read a book to you, you'd read the book back to the teachers. The teachers didn't realize that in them reading the book to me, I'd memorized the entire book via the pictures and within the page. And so as I would read the book back to them, I would just look at the pictures and I'd be able to read off exactly what the text was. Now, that wasn't detected, and so it meant that I didn't really have to think about words and I didn't have to unpick words. And in maths it was simple because maths is all numbers and symbols. So numbers and symbols are something which were easy to me, and I was very good with patterns. And so 8 multiplied by 8, the multiply signs and all of those were absolutely fine. But when it came to reading comprehensions, and in English I was in the bottom set of my class. However, when I was in maths, I was in the top set of my class, and I was at the top of the top set of my class. So my parents were always kind of questioning my teachers as to why this was the case, and my teachers would respond by saying, look, some people just aren't as good in certain subjects, and that was the standardized answer. And I would question my teachers and very much get some negative comments in return. But it took time, and I guess when I got to about 17, when I was taking my first set of public exams, I fully realized and acknowledged that I have dyslexia and it's impacting me because I can't pick up the information I need to pick up in the same time that other people do via the medium of reading a piece of paper.
So when you were faced with a comprehension, let's say, or a piece of text that you'd never seen before, what emotions went through?
I, more often than not, made assumptions about what the question was asking me. So whenever there was a question, I would read the question to the point at which I understood it, and then I would make an assumption on the answer based on what I had read and what I had understood of the question. And that sometimes it would have been 10% of the question, sometimes it would have been 50%, and sometimes it would have been 100%. But it was very rarely 100%. It was more the 50s and the 10s. And so that's why I ended up in a place where I wasn't getting the grades, which my teachers, who in class, of course, the format was very simple. The teacher asks a question, someone puts their hand up and answers it, or the teacher points to someone and they answer it. And I would always get the question right. So, for example, in chemistry, my teachers would be completely baffled as to why I was getting able to answer any question vocally, but not be able to translate that into the page.
And your spelling or your writing ability at that point?
So my writing ability in primary school, I was one of the last kids in my class we had a transition. So we used to all write in pencil and we moved over to pens. I was one of the last kids in my class to get a pen. And to this day, my handwriting's okay. It's not fantastic, but, in terms of my writing, I was improved and got better and better as school went on. It was something that I was learning via until I had a support teacher who was absolutely fantastic, who started working alongside me around the age of 13 and 14. I was working from memory. So everything that I'd seen and remembered and heard, I could very easily translate. And because my memory was so good, it was overcompensating for other factors which weren't as good, which weren't as easy, which made things feel harder.
I can imagine then if your memory was really good, you would have been able to spell well because you would have remembered the words. You would have remembered the letters, the order of the letters in that word.
Most of the time that was true. However, in certain situations where I hadn't seen the word before, or there were certain contexts where in my primary school, if I couldn't spell a word, but I'd heard someone say the word to me, I would know exactly what the word is, and I would have a stab at writing it, but I wouldn't know what the actual spelling of the word is. The times when my memory really kicked in were when you would have kind of complexities in sentences, and certain patterns in the words, and my brain would just pick them up immediately. Within milliseconds, I'd know exactly what the sentence should look like. And that was the kind of foundations I used for being able to facilitate that next step in my development.
Well, there Chantal is saying you must have a fantastic memory. Perhaps your memory is one of your superpowers then.
Absolutely. So I would say, kind of assessing and looking at the person that I am, I'm very self-critical and I spend a lot of time assessing what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I would say, for me, it boils down to three things. And one is my memory. Even now, to this day, I'll be in meetings and I have colleagues who are much more senior and in different kind of engineering backgrounds who will ask me, oh, who was it in that last meeting who said X, Y, and Z? And I'll be able to almost transcript to them exactly who it was and what they said and exactly what part of the meeting it was said in. So a lot of people rely on my memory in that way now. The second I would say is my ability to solve problems. And this started when I was very young. So my parents were told by my school that I'm not doing very well in English. So they bought me Mensa puzzles. And they used to give me adult Mensa puzzles. And I would just burn through books. I would just finish them page by page by page. And so my parents would look at me and be like, okay, we know something's different. We don't quite know what it is. But there's a reason why you're getting through these Mensa puzzles at a rate that you shouldn't be. And a reason why you're in such a good position, and lots of kind of friends and family friends stop playing kind of memory card games with me. So my memory, my ability to solve problems developed from those Mensa puzzles into kind of looking at holistic solutions that we provide in the environment sector. And now a lot of my clients ask a lot of questions around how we solve very, very complex environmental problems that are on engineering schemes. And we often have engineers, architects, and environmental specialists in the same room. And that kind of Mensa puzzle kind of ability has translated into now a real world solution. And it does on a regular basis. And the final one I would say is communication. I spend a lot of my time at work and outside of work presenting and talking to different groups of people who can have a different impact on the planet. So I also run a little platform in my spare time that is a website called the Eco Times, where I promote kind of environmental news. I've created a small community of people who are passionate about having a positive impact on the environment and put some inspiration up on there. And alongside kind of coding the background of that website, I've also am an advisor to a fantastic organization called Gen Z for the Trees. So those three headlines of kind of memory, problem solving, and communication, I would say, are the three things that stand out to me as my lucky superpowers.
I think those are awesome superpowers, actually. And they're clearly making a huge impact in all your endeavors that you have. It seems like you're a very busy young man. If I think about all the things that you're involved in. Yeah.
I am. I like to keep myself busy.
I see that. So what advice, looking back at your 10-year-old self, now that you know all different things about yourself, what advice would you give your 10-year-old self?
I would tell my 10-year-old self to not get so frustrated, to not be so upset when I couldn't do something. I would tell myself, be more patient and take your time. For me, it was very much, I can't do English, so I can't read what that says on the page, so let me just go and do my maths. And I would finish my maths homework in seconds and then take on the next sheet and finish that. And so the whole year's homework would be done within the first 3-4 months of term. Instead of doing that, just breaking down the things which were hard for me, which were difficult, and taking them in a piecemeal approach rather than thinking to myself, there are 50 questions here. I don't even understand one. I don't even understand the first 3 words of the first one. And taking my time, pacing myself, breaking the problems down into something that was manageable. And another piece of advice I'd have for myself is don't be afraid to ask for help. I was always afraid. I was always worried that, someone would think I'm stupid, or why don't I understand something that is super simple for other people, that comes as second nature to my peers. And what I found was two things. One, as I matured and got older, there was a split. Some people also didn't understand the things that I didn't understand, all for different reasons, either learning disabilities and difficulties, or alternatively just that they weren't at the same stage as certain kids who learn quickly. And asking those questions, taking my time, and having that patience were the keys for me. And I wish I could tell my 10-year-old self that.
Yeah. That's great advice. Very, very good advice. So how did you transition from that difficulty with words and reading to have a job writing such important reports? Yes. Excellent
Very
question.
good question. So I would say when I realized that you can't run without crawling, and you can't even walk without crawling, that's when I realized. And so my formative years came at, like it does for you in South Africa when you get to the 7 subject stage. I did my first set of exams and basically didn't work very hard. I didn't put too much effort in, because for me, putting that effort in was too much of a strain. It hurt me too much, and it really knocked me backwards. And so I didn't put the effort in, and I should have put the effort in, because it would have helped me in the next step I was about to make. But when I got to making that next step prior to university, that's when I realized that asking any question about where I was up to and building up myself to get to the university I wanted to go to study the course I wanted to study, that was the first step. And so at that stage, I just needed to build up from being someone who found it difficult to write a paragraph into someone who could be patient with myself, be patient with my environment, and be able to write a whole page, and then be able to write 2. Again, someone who could not really read very fluently. And so to build myself up and build my self-confidence to be able to take a step in the direction of reading, and understanding that it's not about understanding the full sentence, but it's about taking it one word at a time. And so as I was taking it one word at a time, I started digesting the information much better and picking up visual cues and working for my own solutions. So rather than people providing me with solutions all the time, to be receptive to those solutions and to interact with each one to see which one worked for me. So I found that writing on green paper was massively advantageous for me. For me, having a green tint on my screen was massively advantageous for me. The reduction in contrast and the color difference really, really, really helped me. So they were a few small tools which I used along the way. And then I guess for me, I had a big breakthrough in terms of maturity just before I took my exams. And when I got to university at that stage, I decided that I was going to make another leap. And it was really through, rather than looking outside of myself, it was looking internally to reflect on where I was, where my skills lied, and how I utilize those, as you've so wonderfully put them, my superpowers, and how I utilize them to get me into a position where I can actually make the steps and have the impact I want to have. Because I knew that I didn't want to stop at a small impact. I knew that for me, the impact had to be big. It had to influence many people. And so that next step was into scientific literature and how you read it. And for those of us who have read lots of scientific literature, scientists don't write for people, they write for scientists. And so learning how to digest scientific material. My degree is very essay-based, so we would write maybe 2,500 to 4,000 words a week in forms of assessment. And, the only kind of facility we had in terms of supporting dyslexic students was 25% extra time, but you didn't get that for coursework, you only had that for exams. And so I had to learn what my disciplines were. I didn't work beyond 11 o'clock. And when I woke up the next morning, my first job would to be proofread to what I've done the day before. And I built in lots of mechanisms into my studying, into my work, into my assessment, so that I wasn't in a position where I could trip myself up. And when I did trip myself up, I have a little black book that I always keep on me. And I sit down and I make notes and I put learnings in there. I brainstorm, I pull out ideas, all for personal development, professional development, and development in terms of my dyslexia and how I can use it to my advantage. Ideas which I've not explored, ideas which I have explored but have gone maybe in the direction I wished, and some which haven't. And I created an environment for myself of a positive feedback loop where everything I did in my life, all the exploration, all the times I pushed myself out my comfort zone, and that was a big thing for me, feeling confident to step outside my comfort zone more than maybe other students had to, because reading for them was simple. And then creating a structure for myself, and this was maybe the final piece of the puzzle, where I didn't get stressed, or I could manage my stress. Because to this day, what I find is that, and the people who know me and love me, my family and those who are close to me, will know that I always say, a lot of people are privileged to be able to be stressed. For me, that's not something I have. When I'm stressed, I can't read my own name. When I'm stressed, I can't read the reports I need to read. I manage a big, big team. I manage some very important reports that go out to some important clients. And that stress is not something which I take on. I manage my day, I manage my environment, I manage the place where I live and the things that I do to ensure I can be effective. So I know that was a lot.
Brilliant advice. No, it's brilliant advice. And I really do hope that specifically some of our high school students are listening to what you're saying, because I think when you've traveled a road that has been extremely bumpy, with many, many hills to climb, you do tend to lose that sense of will to just keep going, one step in front of the other, and things do become overwhelming. And I've known so many children that have literally given up, and the only reason they've kept going is because of teachers who have believed that they could do it, and parents who have kept them going and have carried on cheerleading at the side of the field. So if you think of your own, you just spoke now about your family, what role did your parents play in your outlook on life in general?
An enormous part, and I owe a lot of my time and patience and where I am today to my parents, but also to my family. I'm very fortunate and very lucky to say that I come from a British Indian family, so joint family structure, but in a very modern environment. So we have a kind of plethora of individuals who sit round the table at dinner, and there is no topic that is off the table for talking about. If you can think of the topic, we will discuss it. My parents also are people who will always challenge, who will always ask a question. We all come from different professional environments. We've all been to different top universities around the UK and the world. My parents have always welcomed opinions and welcomed me to talk and be free and have that freedom of thought, but never allow me into a space where I don't question, where I just say, it is what it is, and that's fine. My parents have always pushed me to question and never give up. And the story of my grandfather is a story that could take up a whole nother hour, so I won't go into it now. But his story is something that will always drive me to success. and will always drive me to not allow myself to give up. The challenges he faced are just as great, and if not even greater than what I've been through, as have my parents too. But the real values that my parents instilled in me were kind of determination, hard work, self-analysis, but also being able to be positive enough to always look ahead, to see what's on the horizon and beyond, in order to be able to pick up on the key important issues and address them in a meaningful way. And my parents weren't very kind of traditional in terms of their parenting style. They always told us, you can all do, as children, I've got two sisters, one older and one younger. They told me you can do anything you want to do in life, but we have one condition on you, that you work as hard as you can and you achieve everything you can achieve. And it doesn't matter what you want to do, what profession you choose, what field you choose, but you have to fulfill your potential and do everything to fulfill it.
I love that.
And my
Fulfill
parents, that
your
was,
potential. Yeah.
yeah. And my parents, that was what they always said to us. And they said to us, don't look at us and try and be us. Don't try and be the best version that we can be. We're different people. We're all different, but you need to figure out what you want to do and how you get to be 100% Preeyus.
Yeah.
And how you fill Preeyus's
version.
capacity.
Yeah, the best version of yourself. There's a question there about how do you manage your stress? What is your approach to stress? And have you had to deal with anxiety?
Yeah, so I think we all have to deal with stresses day to day, whether they're physical, mental, or otherwise. I think anxiety is there, and we will always get anxiety around some people get it around events, right? Some people get it around the submitting of a report. The way I like to go about things is I'm a mega planner. I'll plan day to day, but I'll also plan hour to hour. And when things are really, really tough and there's even more to do, I plan each individual hour. So I'll plan 10-minute slots within my hour. That's the kind of first technique I use, making sure that I have a good plan in place. The next thing I do is I start right at the beginning. So I find that it's easy to get stressed when you don't start at the beginning. And I think with a lot of problems, people dive into the middle of the issue and they've not peeled back the first 3 layers. So I consciously have a set of strategies and reminders that there's a problem in front of me. There's always going to be a solution. There is no problem that doesn't have a solution in my eyes. And so the first part is stepping back, removing yourself from that situation to see what it is. And so I approach it from that perspective, and I get all the way down to the nitty-gritty of what each individual problem is. And I make sure that one piece of advice that I gave my younger self, which is ask for help, I always do that. I sit down with my colleagues. I sit down with my technical experts, and I ask them, so outline to me, what are the 3 key issues that I need to know here? Because it's understanding that part of the stress and part of the anxiety for me, and I think for a lot of people, comes from feeling like you don't know what you need to know. And sometimes we over-egg what we need to know. It's impossible to know everything. And so me understanding those first 2 to 3 steps to get to the point where I know who to bring in, who to ask for help, and what format that help comes in, is key. Along with one other thing, which is, I think us as adults, we also forget this and need reminding, but communication. When you're feeling stressed, when I feel overwhelmed, when I feel overworked, when I feel like I've got too many projects on, I communicate that to my colleagues. I communicate it to my technical experts so I can pace out my week. I can ask for support. I can lend my help to my colleagues when they're stressed. And what I've found is having these kind of 3 to 4 steps in place in order to kind of resolve and solve problems for my team and my clients.
So you've practiced it longer.
Yeah.
So you're the coach now.
I guess I've had no choice, you know.
You've put in place, you can tell that you've thought them through very carefully. You haven't just come up with them overnight. It's been things that you've had to work through, knowing what you need in order to be able to do what needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Which again, kids don't get taught that. It's something that they have to discover with a kind and loving adult along the way, I think. Which again, you know, I'm alluding to teachers. You spoke about your parents and how supportive your parents are and were, but I also think being in the right environment, you know, think of yourself being in a school where, you know, possibly you were ridiculed, you know, you were teased, you were, you know, called funny names because, you know, you struggle to read or whatever. And I mean, a lot of children go through that on a day-to-day basis, you know, and it really, it's one of those things that I think, you know, compassion and empathy, you know, we've got to teach one another. We have to teach each other that compassion and empathy, that we all have struggles. We all have things that we need to overcome. And it's about just being there for one another and asking for help, bottom line. I think that's tremendous advice because, again, kids, especially teenagers, they don't want to show that they're not coping or that they don't understand something. They're not going to put up their hand.
And those, I would say it kind of goes in three phases. So when I was in primary school, for me, the worst part was people laughing when it came to my turn to read. Because let's face it, when the book was read in front of the whole class and it was a brand new book, I couldn't read. So it didn't, I couldn't get to that point where the teacher would be satisfied with my reading. And so that was always a challenge for me. People would laugh and tease me. And I had a few teachers who actually asked me if I wasn't as intelligent and threatened my kind of intelligence in that way, which was as a child something you don't fully understand or why you're being treated in that way. And then when you get to secondary school, being different is the last thing that any kind of teenager wants to be. But
100%.
When you leave that phase, that being different is something that I would never wish it to go away. What I've managed to do in getting to where I am is I'm so grateful for, and what I have managed to achieve. I'm one of the youngest principal consultants in my field. The experience I have, and I've been very lucky to have, not many people in my field even have it. And so part of that is down to my dyslexia, down to the skills which I've had to develop and learn, and some of the skills which I naturally have. And so I would say those things that you will away as a teenager, you don't need to will them away. You need to work with them and give them patience, give them love, feed them everything they need in order to get to the right place.
I like that. Work with them, you know.
Yeah.
Become friends with them so that they can enable you, not disable you. So we're coming to the end now, and there was a question about visual reminders on your desk. I think there was a question from, I think it was Rose. She was saying, I use a lot of visual reminders on the child's desk to help the kids with dyslexia. So I'm wondering what visual reminders, maybe Rose, you can clarify. Are you referring to things like sight words or things that can help them with math, or just clarify that? Because I know, you know, just sight words, for example, kids struggle with remembering those words that you can't easily sound out. So it's about putting your, you know, those words that you don't know, put them up on your bathroom mirror, say them every day. Learn to see, you know, learn to remember what they look like, not necessarily how they sound. So things like that, I'm presuming that's what Rose is referring to. Rose is a teacher at my school, so I must go and have a look at her desk tomorrow on the desks and see what they are. Yeah, you see, Zukis was saying, hello, Philippa, load shedding got us. I will listen on the recording. Thank you for that. That's fine, Zukis. The recording will be up for a while still. Preeyus, so what's tools and strategies? You know, one of the things that we encourage at Elson Academy for kids with writing and reading problems is the use of the computer. So we don't insist on children writing cursive. You write whatever you feel comfortable writing, print or cursive. We don't force children to transition over to cursive if they're not comfortable doing that. And as soon as possible, when we can, we introduce the keyboarding skill so that they learn. Would you say that you prefer to keyboard rather than write now today?
Definitely. So I would say the first thing is I make all of my plans by hand. So all of my kind of daily plans, weekly plans, and hourly plans I do in my notepad, because I kind of add drawings in and I add tables in. And for example, we do a lot of proposals. So there'll be a road scheme being built and we need to put a proposal in. And I encourage my team to not just be very, very good in terms of written communication, but to go beyond that and understand that our clients are receiving kind of 50 to 60 pages of words. Now, one picture in the words of National Geographic spells 1,000 words. And so we can put one image into that. And it's not just a photo, but it's a series of kind of infographics that helps our client understand our knowledge and our experience and how it differs from our competitors. Is something which I encourage everyone to do. In terms of writing, in the core kind of reports that we give out, environmental statements that we put out. So some of the environmental statements that I've put out in the last kind of 2 to 3 years are about 10,000 pages long. So they're big old documents, and of course they have to be written within Word because I review the entire document from cover to cover, and I'm the person who gets that kind of almost final level of sign off. So there's a team of us who do that final level of sign off. And so in those, they are written. I did used to, when I was at school, laptops and computers weren't commonplace. And then as I kind of joined university, I was given a laptop and the means of kind of typing. That was a big transition for me and very, very helpful. Me in terms of two aspects was it very, very helpful. One, in terms of being able to get all my ideas down on a piece of paper and construct my paragraphs in exams, but also then when I came to reviewing what I'd written, I could rearrange my paragraphs and get my thoughts in exactly the right position. So both from a structural perspective as well as a kind of writing perspective.
And do you enjoy reading? Do you ever read for fun? Not necessarily environmental reports, but other types of books and things?
I didn't used to, but I do now enjoy reading. I must admit, after a very, very long day at work, when I've kind of read one of my densest chapters of kind of landscape impacts, I don't choose to read on an evening. Once I've done my 5,000 pages, it's kind of time for me to put the reading aside.
Put it to bed. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do very much enjoy reading. I listen to audiobooks, but I also read along. I have read kind of the full Harry Potter series as an adult. I never really read them as a child, but yeah, I do. And like I said, I write a lot on the Eco Times, so I write big opinion pieces on how we can tackle kind of environmental issues, and also post kind of daily news articles on there as well. So I end up reading a fair volume even outside of work.
So I think we are now on our final question. So if there's anybody that would like to pose your final question to Preeyus, now is the time. Also, we wanted to know if our kids needed to get hold of you. Let's say there are some watching and they are a little bit shy to speak online. Where could they find you? Is there somewhere that they could reach you?
Absolutely. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have a LinkedIn, just Google my name, because everything that comes up is to do with me. My parents blessed me with a very unique name. I'll send you my email address, so any of the students who want to email me can do that too. And then also my Instagram. So my Instagram is, again, if you search my name, I should come up.
It comes up. Awesome. So final last words for any parents that are listening to our conversation. Any final last words for parents?
It's a simple one from me. Keep positive. Keep your patience. Shower your children with love. And they will have superpowers. Some of them may not be displaying them today. Some may displaying them in terms of difficult times. Some may displaying them in terms of other abilities. But really give them the opportunity to express themselves. And a question and kind of a statement I'll put out is one thing that one piece of advice I give all my friends who have children who have dyslexia or anything else or any other learning difficulties. When your children are most frustrated, what do they go to? And focus on those things. But their superpowers will help you one day and maybe teach you more than you can imagine today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. It's where do they go? Where do they go to escape? I think that is key. So many children escape into a book or will escape onto a gaming platform or social media, just to get away from the struggles and trials and tribulations of school life. But thank you, Preeyus. I don't know how to thank you. You have been the most gracious guest. We had such fun. We had blackouts and load shedding too. It's been quite exciting. So a real baptism of fire for the first one. Well done, Pre. There's a comment. I don't know who that one from. Chantal saying, been such an awesome conversation. Thank you both so much. It really provides so much insight and understanding. Preeyus, you are an inspiration. We really do hope that we can chat again. I will certainly be following you along on Clubhouse, which is where we met.
Yep.
We'll bump into each other in a room somewhere along the line. But thank you. What a star. What a star you've been. I really, really thank you.
Thank you, Philippa, and thank you for having me, and thank you for setting this up, and thank you, Chantal, as well for your help in setting this up too.
Yes, thank you, Chantal. My husband is saying green.
Yes, we made for him.
For him?
Yeah, because he likes green.
Oh, you like green. So we've given you a green screen.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's a very green screen. So, Preeyus, we're going to put you backstage. Don't go away, because I'd like to have a word with you at the end. But thank you so much again. And just before we go, that's a wrap, folks. No child, as we said right in the beginning, no child should ever be excluded from school because of the way that they learn. Let's transform kids with challenges into young heroes with superpowers, changing their world and ours. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for watching. Catch me next Wednesday at 8 o'clock for Q&A with Dr. Danny Ahing. And we will quickly summarize this evening's conversation, and we will have some more questions. So thank you so much. Have a good evening and stay safe.
I'm Philippa Fabbri. Welcome to the Show Your Superpower series. Conversations with engineers, entrepreneurs, creatives, founders, scientists, thought leaders, disruptors, and warriors. Here to provide insight into what differently able children can become, given the right environment, teachers, and parenting. Because just asking the right questions and listening to what our children need can turn real challenges into superpowers that can change their world. Here we go.